I'm here with acclaimed dramatist David Eldridge, and he has been having his plays in theatres everywhere, from the West End to Broadway. He is also written for stage, screen, radio, and is a lecturer in creative writing and screenwriting. And he is noted as one of the most acclaimed voices in playwriting and important voices of our generation. So thank you very much for coming along. We're in good company. Thanks for coming to chat with us today at Manchester Theatres.
Thank you. A bit red-faced now. I don't really know what to say, but there you go.
Don't be. So we're here, obviously, to talk about your play Beginning, which is coming to the Royal Exchange in Manchester from the 16th of February to the 11th of March. And it's been described as kind of a will they, won't they rom-com between these two characters, Danny and Laura, who meet at the end of a flat warming party, but they don't really know each other. So can you elaborate on that for us?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, there's not loads more to add. It's like the play comes from a really simple situation, you know, of the two last people left standing at about 2 a.m. at a house party, and yeah, you know, they kind of like the look of one another, but you know, like sometimes there's a kind of a moment when people meet where if they don't just smile at each other and walk towards each other and kiss,
yes,
then suddenly there's a kind of a weird awkwardness that can kind of permeate, you know, as though you had a moment and you kind of missed it. And in a way, the play all grows out of that, really, you know, just a really simple situation with two people. And I think the play does kind of, as it tells, you kind of get to know their whole life stories in many ways through the course of the evening as they talk and have a laugh and all the rest of it. And there is a strong element of kind of will they, won't they? But I think part of what the play does and what the play's up to is wondering as an audience what's going to become of these characters beyond the evening. So one of the things that's, I think, been really nice about this play, and it's kind of an effect I tried to achieve with the play, is that when people are getting a drink afterwards or when they're on the way home, there's a kind of a discussion about, well, what was it any more than where they got to at the end of the play, or
you kind of leave it. I love that part of leaving the theatre, sort of listening to what everyone else has to say and like different theories and things like that. And I think with Beginning as well, the characters are so, like you say, because it's just the two of them and there's just that kind of period of time, the characters are so amazingly written that there's no way at some point as you're watching it that you're not going to connect with one of them or both of them, or that you've done something and you've got them eating fish fingers sandwiches at midnight and dancing to Bros and the bit where, you know, Danny picks up a bin liner so he can go around clearing up in someone else's apartment they don't even know, just to avoid talking about his feelings. So you've got such juicy little nuggets in there. Do you get those from people you know, from people watching? Are they from yourself, or where do all these like juicy nuances come from?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of the three things, really. Like it's kind of things that I'll have experienced, things that like I'll have heard, you know. So I mean, the kind of, you know, the basic premise for the play comes from a funny story that happened to a friend of mine. So it wasn't something that happened to me, you know, it's just something that I heard. So there's a mixture of things that you've heard, that you've maybe read about, that have happened to you, and then also just things that you know, part of being an artist and a writer is using your imagination, right? So you're also kind of transforming those experiences. So it's always a mixture of the three, and I don't know. I mean, there's lots of things I try to do, but I think in this play, I really want to try and create something that feels very real, because you're asking the audience to kind of share a space with these characters for an hour and 40 minutes straight through, as though they're in the room with them, and it's like almost like they're in a completely real slice of life and encounter with these people. So in writing this play, a lot of the effort has gone into just making it feel very real, at the same time of all the usual things that I want to do with the play, which is to entertain people so that they kind of, I suppose, in an old-fashioned way, laugh and cry, and also to give audiences something to think about a bit, maybe to reflect upon their own lives, where they are, to think about where they are now, where they were, if when they met their partner, if they're on their own, how they feel about that, So yeah, all of those things. But I think creating something that feels very real is really good for me with this one.
Yeah, and like you say, the brilliance of this is that it is in real time. So like you say, that really helps create that realness, and in it kind of, it shows the difference between the characters trying to sync themselves emotionally towards each other, and sync their emotions and the desires, and because it is what they both want, but it's how they go about doing that, because in order to do that, you've got to allow that vulnerability, which isn't necessarily what they want to do, and that's kind of the play that kind of that unfolds between them, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, a friend of mine says that that being able to share your vulnerability with someone mutually is a kind of definition of love or falling in love. So I think that what you're saying there is really sensitive and true. You're exactly right. That dance, they kind of almost have to do a dance to get to the point where they're both kind of able to just be themselves and be vulnerable with each other. But I mean, it's. I think as well, like I was really interested in the idea of, because I'd had this idea for years, for years and years and years, and and I never ever, for various reasons, wrote it. Sometimes I was busy doing other things, and for some reason it didn't quite click. And I think the reason why the play clicked for me, as I was sort of someone in his early 40s, like the characters were getting older with me over the years. Like it was an idea I had for 15 years, so it's a really long held idea. Was that actually by the time the characters are kind of knocking 40, then there's just a lot more baggage, so there's a lot more reasons not to share your vulnerability.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have a better chance of a better play in a funny way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
More there,
Yeah, and it's kind of like, even extending that further, it's because of the real time and all the things that you've just said. It's very much, it strikes me that it's very much about living in the moment as well.
Yeah.
And you've a lot, we tend, especially as we get older, we tend to sort of sleepwalk through life a little bit, and you miss those unique little moments, whether it's like a bit of a glance or a side eye or a blink and things like that. And so because of that, you've sort of mentioned it there, that the idea was with you for such a long time, but was the idea of the trilogy always there, or was it just one play, and then, or was it the idea of the arc of the relationship? I know obviously it's been split, and I know they're not the same characters in middle and so on, but so was it a standalone, and then you thought, oh, hang on, there's leverage in this, I could go to the middle and the end, or what was the initial?
Initially I just wrote beginning, but when what it was when beginning was on in the National Theatre in its first production, I had the idea of middle, and then I sort of saw how, like, I kind of imagined the characters from middle on the stage and their predicament, and being 10 years older, and it being kind of in the middle passage in a funny way, when you're well into a relationship, and has it got any further to go, and that question. And I sort of realized then that kind of that beginning could be something that could have a really good life on its own, but it could also be part of a bigger project that said something about relationships. And I think that's in particular, like, interested in like relationships and loneliness as well, and the different types of loneliness there are. And I think, like in beginning, both Danny and Laura have kind of feelings of kind of isolation, because they're single and because where they've got to in their lives, they feel a bit stuck, both of them for different reasons. But like with Middle, Gary and Maggie feel loneliness within a relationship, which I think is a very painful sort of loneliness, actually, I mean, Philip Larkin in his poem Talking in Bed, he kind of sort of says that there's nowhere lonelier than a unhappy marriage bed, so, and there's a different kind of relationships and loneliness that I'm sort of exploring in the final play End. But yeah, it's people can. I never ever wanted to write sequels, though. That's why they're different characters.
Yeah.
Because with each play as well, I kind of want that same feeling of the audience at the end in the bar afterwards on the way home. Like, what's happened to Maggie and Gary after Middle? Like, has their marriage survived? Like, is this evening a catalyst for positive change, or is it, just another sticking plaster,
Yeah.
So if I'd written sequels where it's the same couple that you follow through, you kind of don't quite have that effect because you're telling the audience what happened,
Yeah. There's no open-ended ability for looking inwards, is there? I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's brilliant. That's so good. So obviously, as you mentioned, it started at the National Theatre, transferred to the West End, toured, and now we've got it in Manchester. So that was in 2017 it started. So obviously you've had different actors, different directors, a pandemic in the middle. Has that kind of influenced or changed this production that we're now going to see in Manchester? Because obviously with elements of loneliness and relationships, it can make you read text in a different way and bring something completely new to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the whole experience of the pandemic has really, really made the theme I was just talking about, actually the theme of loneliness and the need to connect even more. And I've sort of seen productions of beginnings since the pandemic, and it just pings out in a kind of a even more vivid way. I think it's because whether you're in a relationship or you're not, however you feel about your relationship if you're in one, or however you feel about being single if you're not in one, we all collectively kind of experienced quite an extreme form of loneliness and isolation, didn't we, for a while? So I think you're bang on in what you're saying there. I think that there are other things that are Manchester specific. So I think that, like, one of the things I'm so happy and excited about with the play being on in the Exchange is because of the architecture of the Exchange, being the round. I think we will really, even more than any production I've seen, feel like we're in the room with them.
Yes.
You just feel like you're in there with them. It's such a beautiful, focused, intense and intimate space. The module in the Royal Exchange, I absolutely love it. And the second thing is that I've lightly adapted the beginning. So it's a Manchester beginning. Manchester and the Northwest are places I know really well. I lived in the Northwest for 3 years, and my ex-wife and oldest son live up in Manchester still. They live in Chawton, and my son goes to school in West Didsbury. So it's a place I know very well. I sort of think of Manchester as a second home. And,
we'll adopt you.
Sorry?
We'll adopt you.
So it's a Manchester beginning now. So the action of the play takes place in West Didsbury, rather than Crouch End.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah, and it's been really lovely. And then, I kind of like, it was kind of sort of something that Bryony sort of kind of hinted at in quite a sort of kind of modest way, but also it was something that I was arriving at myself, because when the play's been translated and done abroad, it's always much better when they do like a Paris beginning set in Paris
Yes.
rather than a play set in London that's been translated,
Yeah.
you
Got
know?
you.
Or, there was a lovely Catalan production of Beginning that was a Catalan couple in Barcelona. Just talking about the French production actually in Paris. I mean, the guys supported Olympique Lyonnais, and obviously like Scotch eggs and all of that don't mean anything
Yes.
to French audiences. So they had all these jokes about Belgian cheese because the French are very snobby about Belgian cheese, so I just sort of felt like actually I know Manchester and the Northwest really intimately, and I think like very lightly adapting the play. So the play is not a radically different play in any way at all. And in many ways, it will be hard for you to spot the differences, but to just very lightly adapt it so that these are Mancunians characters and that the play takes place in Laura's West Didsbury flat and the references are Manchester references.
Yeah, very subtle.
Felt really gorgeous, and I think that would be really nice for an exchange audience too.
Sounds amazing. It sounds amazing. And just finishing your last, talking about relationships, your other big relationship, of course, is with West Ham, the Hammers. So I've grown up in a football family as well. Had a season ticket for over 15 years. You've actually got one of our old managers at the minute. Hope he does better for you than us. But yeah, so I was just wondering, obviously there is a drip feed of claret and blue throughout your plays. Obviously Danny is a West Ham fan, maybe not, we'll have to wait and see in the Manchester version, but and obviously you've got I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles in Basildon. So is this something that we can look forward to, a football themed play or specifically a West Ham play in the future, or is that just yours? Is that something that's for you, and then you keep your writing and your work sort of separate?
Yeah, it's I think it is to do with my work. Like I think that it's just to do with like writing out of the world that you come from, like Nick Hornby in his novels, like they're always Arsenal fans, but he grew up in Highbury, and it's actually just part of the world that you come from that you're writing. And part of my world, is a world where people generally in that part of East London and then East London overspill into Essex is a kind of a claret and blue patch of outer London. And so it makes complete sense that there are characters again and again if they are interested in football, that's who they support. I've been approached a couple of times, about doing a kind of a more West Ham specific play, but I haven't really found anything that has captured my imagination so far. I've learned not to rule anything out over the years. You're silly not to. You sort of say these things and then along comes an idea that's a really good one and you end up doing it. But I can definitely say that Danny in The Exchange Beginning is not a West Ham fan. He's a Man U fan.
Yes, come on, that's what we wanted to hear. Sorry to all the Blues out there, but I'm happy. Oh, thank you so much. Now, I think that is the perfect reason to tell everyone in Manchester to come and watch. And if you're not a Red, then oh well. Have you got anything that you want to add as to why people should come and watch Beginning?
Oh no, I mean I'd love people to come and see it. I mean, apart from anything else, because I think that apart from the story, to have the experience of seeing a kind of a play that's like an hour and 40 minutes straight through in the round in the exchange, I'm really excited to see that, because I think that it will be a kind of a really kind of intimate and intense experience. And I think it is a play that does give people a range of emotions as well. I think that within the context of that intensity and intimacy, it is a play that in an old-fashioned sense makes you laugh and makes you cry. So, I hope people can get along.
Yeah, and like the bank seats as well in the Royal Exchange. If you're on one of them, you're in that room with them.
Yeah.
So it's going to be fantastic. Thank you so much for chatting with me today, David. And You can catch beginning at the Royal Exchange from the 16th of February to the 11th of March. Grab a ticket because they're going to go.